Are others on the call hearing anything in the room?
Nope.
No, I can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear one another, but I don't think we can hear anything in the room.
Lee's on the case.
I know. I was like, lead to the rescue.
Can you hear us now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
I can.
You've been sitting
Right.
on this whole time. I was just enjoying watching you. Let's see how long it takes. I was like.
So I have 12:42, so I know folks are converting to Teams, and we'll give them time to do that. But we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order at 12:42, the August 2022 Justice Resource Advisory Council meeting. Thank you all for being here today. And thank you for your patience as we navigate the hybrid world. I will take a motion at the end of this meeting to go fully in person if that's what y'all want to do. This in between is it's kind of difficult. But I'll go ahead, DK Wesley, Assistant County Manager and Chair of JRAC. I'll go ahead and call the roll. If you could unmute yourself and speak when I call your name. Commissioner Jasmine Beach-Ferrara.
Present.
I am present. Chief Blake, I think he ran out, but he was here in person, so we'll come back to him. Andy Zoller in place for Pat Freeman.
I'm here.
Sylvia Clement. Danny Cohen. Judge Thornburg. I believe Todd Williams has an alternate.
Yes, I'm here, Meredith.
Meredith.
Wesley.
Sam Sneed.
He said he was not gonna be able to make it today.
Tiffany Ihanacho has an alternate as well. Paulina, are you on?
I am present. Good afternoon.
Donald Roos,
Present.
Chief Zach, Justin Dow, Julia Horrocks, Susan Avett,
Present.
Rachel Nygaard,
Present.
Deborah Campbell,
Present.
Mayor Manheimer.
Here.
Lori Anderson, Jay Hackett,
Present.
and Julie Reisdorf.
Present.
I don't think they can see us over here, but that's okay.
We can make that work.
All right, so we certainly have a quorum. Thank you all for being here today. First item on the agenda is a consent agenda. You should have received the today's agenda as well as June minutes. Any questions or comments or suggested revisions to the August agenda and or the June minutes? All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second. From Jasmine Beach-Ferrara.
Any discussion? All right, I'm assuming that hybrid, I'm not sure if there's a roll call rule for hybrid. Yes, okay, I'll do roll call. Jasmine?
Aye.
DK, aye. Chief Blake?
Here.
Andy?
Here.
Meredith?
Aye.
Paulina?
Aye.
Donald?
Aye.
Julia?
Aye.
Suzanne?
Aye.
Rachel?
Aye.
Deborah?
Aye.
Mayor Manheimer?
Aye.
Jay?
Aye.
And Julie? Yes. All right. Passes. We mentioned before that at each JRAC, we want to leave space to have discussions around data in hopes that we can, I think we do a pretty good job on making data-driven decisions or just having discussions around the impact of our trends that we're seeing. And so today, Dr. Lee Creighton will be providing an update on our justice systems data. He'll be talking about failure to appears in jail population. Lee?
Okay, so I'm gonna share it right now.
Yeah, I think so.
Bear with me as I. Get this set up. Oops, that is not the screen I'm going to share. I apologize. Well, that's the screen I'm going to have to share because it's the one that Teams is going to let me share.
Just give it a minute, y'all. Dr. Creighton's sharing the screen.
Okay. So it's good to be back with you all this month. I think I was with you all last in June, and we talked a little bit about jail population trends and touched a little bit on this specific population of those who are impacted by order for arrest for failure to appear. We've since done a little bit more of a deeper dive into this population, presented some information to one of our Safety and Justice Challenge work groups that's focused on case processing, and we thought it might be an interesting conversation to bring to this group this month. So I'm going to walk through a few slides here that we've put together. This one, if you were in attendance at the last JRAC meeting, might look familiar to you, but it is the trend over time of the average daily population by month for state pretrial is that tall blue bar. There is a segment of the blue bar that's lighter shaded, and what that represents is people who are in custody only due to an order for arrest for failure to appear on their booking. What we see is the pandemic impact, that this was a population that was greatly impacted during those pandemic months. We know that the courts were operating in a different capacity, people's court dates were getting pushed out. And so that was really, what's going on? Y'all saw I didn't touch it. We are getting some interesting stuff going on here. Let's try it again. Sorry, y'all. Okay. So, all right, hopefully that's better. I'm gonna stay very far away from it. But what we've done is we're seeing a return to pre-pandemic levels with this population. Back in May, actually, the average daily population for failure to appear only was 67. So 67 people in custody, only in custody on average per day in May only had an order for arrest for failure to appear on their booking out of 416 state pretrial folks. And so that was about 16% of that state pretrial population that was, again, only in custody on that booking due to an order for arrest for failure to appear. So we're going to take a little bit deeper dive into this population, understand a little bit more about them. So looking at the fiscal year 2022 data, so average state pretrial population for the fiscal year was 357. Almost 50% of those folks were in custody for an order for arrest for failure to appear, along with possibly some other reason. So basically almost 50% of your state pretrial population was being impacted by an order for arrest for failure to appear. Of that 357, about 14% were only in on a failure to appear, order for arrest for failure to appear, translated to about 49 people a day. When we look at entries into the facility, approximately 34% of the bookings that came in had an order for arrest for failure to appear.
Can I ask a dumb question?
Oh, yeah, please.
So that's Buncombe County.
This is Buncombe County.
Okay, so when it says state pretrial,
that means that they are
not in federal court, they're state court.
They have pending issues in Buncombe County Courthouse. And so for the FTA only group coming into the facility, that was about 22% of bookings. And you can see that the vast majority are on misdemeanor offenses, but felony 2 is a high number when we break it down by type of offense. On the right-hand side, you see the most common offenses on an FTA-only booking for last fiscal year. So these are ranked 1 through 10. And so you can see what types of misdemeanors and felonies are most frequently tied to these types of bookings. Trying to understand when a failure to appear is occurring in someone's case pendency process. And so if we look back at when the original charge was filed in court on this individual, we see that the bulk of FTA bookings that came into custody last fiscal year were on charges that were initiated in 2020 and 2021. That is no surprise, again, because of what we know that was an impact of the pandemic. You'll see that there are some folks who had actually orders for arrest served on them that originate to charges back quite a long time ago. So 1999 is the earliest one. That specific instance was someone had received an order for arrest for a failure to appear on a charge that was taken out in 2021, but there was an open order for arrest from 1999 that was served on them while they were in custody. Oops, sorry. The other side of this slide looks at the length of time these individuals are staying in custody on average. For fiscal year 2022, the average length of stay for the state pretrial population was 17 days. You see that that increases when there's an order for arrest for failure to appear. The FTA only population, so those who are only in custody due to an order for arrest for failure to appear, they stay on a shorter amount of time. And then you can see the types of, this is the most serious original offense type on those FTA only bookings. So you can see class 1 misdemeanors, that is where the bulk of those charges are classified for these releases, and they stayed on average just over 6 days in custody. In general, people who are in custody for felonies typically stay longer than those who are in on misdemeanors, and that is the trend when you see an order for arrest on those bookings for those types of charges. Last time, Mr. Hackett raised a question about the impact of poverty on this specific population, and so we were able to pull some data to look at the indigent status of the individuals who are in custody on a specific day during July. And so 32% of the total jail population on the 15th of July were flagged as indigent in the detention facility's commissary system.
What
35, excuse me?
What percentage was that?
32%. And then for those who are in custody only for an order for arrest for failure to appear, that was slightly higher at 35%. So poverty is greatly impacting the population overall, but it does have a little bit larger effect, it seems, on those folks who are in custody for order for arrest for failure to appear only. The demographics of this population, average age, just under 35 years of age, about 30% were women, 70% male, 18% Black, 82% white. Unhoused, approximately, we estimate about 18%. And the way we defined unhoused, they were presumed to be unhoused if the address tied to their name record was North Ann Street or the detention facility. Where these people, yep.
I apologize for interrupting.
No, please.
The 19 North Ann Street is A-Hope, am I correct?
That is A-Hope.
Do people utilize the address of the rescue ministry, or do those residents use Ann Street?
I believe historically we've used North Ann as the address. That's often where people get their mail, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's what we predominantly see.
Okay, it's important to note that, that there may be people that are involved with WNC Rescue Ministry that do not participate in Ann Street, and there's often disparity between programs that are led by people of color. And we see that in homelessness services provided.
Got it. So we could certainly look at that, including that address as well in that unhoused sort of proxy measure. Thank you for that.
I believe that's the only shelter that will allow people to get mail that like uses a PO box or like a
So
actual
AHOPE is the
address
only actual address.
from an address perspective.
We can look into it.
Thank you.
So I don't know if any of the other shelters have changed their policies to allow individuals to receive mail. So I know that originated with the acceptance of mail.
Right. We can certainly look into it. Where do these people, where are they physically located within the county? So this is looking at bookings coming into the facility with an order for arrest for failure to appear by the zip code that's tied to that individual in the database. You can see in this, the darker blue, that's a higher percentage of bookings that are coming out, or excuse me, coming into custody that have an order for arrest for failure to appear on them. So I've tried to create a failure to appear booking rate for each zip code to make them comparable, right? Because the population sizes are not comparable across zip code. So the darker blue represents those areas where we have the highest percentage of FTA booking rate. So then taking the number of bookings coming in with the order for arrest for failure to appear and dividing that by the total bookings that came from that zip code to create that rate. So.
But that's a 5%, so you could have 5 people.
Correct, yeah. But you can see the lighter areas are in the south, and then the darker areas outside of the city, that center city, are in the northern part of the county, which we do see a lower number of people coming in from those areas, but they are still represented within the jail population. I think I've got just a couple more slides, but that does close it out for the local data that we looked at. But just wanted to highlight, if you're interested in learning more about North Carolina court appearances across the state, there was recently a report released by a study that was aimed at New Hanover, Orange, and Robeson counties. That was out collaboration with the School of Government and Jessica Smith. They have, in their report, walked away with a number of policy recommendations, many of which you can see are really about getting people information as well as supportive resources to help them address the barriers that they have when showing up to court. There's also Measuring for Justice, which is another project of the School of Government that's available. It's got a number of metrics in it that you can look at that they have put out, and court appearance is one of those metrics that they look at. So just some resources for you all if you want to see what's going on in other places across the state. It is looking at the data a little bit differently because it's looking at it through the lens of the court system as opposed to the jail, which we did today. Also just wanted to highlight some of the latest pretrial research that's been published on the academic side of things. So in June, a study was released and published. Their key finding was really that the bail amount was not significantly associated with failure to appear or rearrest during the pretrial period. And I've pulled out verbatim a specific section of the study and its findings, and I've emphasized it myself, but ultimately, they found that bail does not incentivize a return to court because many of the reasons that people fail to appear in court are related to finances. They can't miss work, they have transportation barriers, they're caring for family and children, and they have no alternative means of a caretaker, and ultimately no amount of assigned bail will incentivize people out of those barriers. So it's really about, if we want to move the needle, we really have to think outside of the system and getting the folks the supports and resources that they need. So to that end, we are trying to work on this issue locally. There's a couple of projects right now that are ongoing to really deepen our understanding of the root causes of failure to appear for folks here in Buncombe County. We have a survey that's active right now with our community engagement work group as part of the Safety and Justice Challenge. We've been discussing looking closer and understanding more about of folks who are on pretrial and have a history of FTAs. We're also looking at better promoting and also exploring how we might be able to incorporate court notifications and sign up into our new existing processes. I know Justice Services have been having some conversations with the ID Bureau as a part of that, and then also the new court navigator position. So those are some of the things that we're doing right now to try to better address the needs of this specific population. Any questions?
Is there a reason why it's not an option not to issue an order for arrest for a failure to appear? Does that make sense? I mean, I'm not a judge. Like, why couldn't you just say, okay, they're not here, we'll continue this out and we're gonna renotice the defendant? I mean, maybe there's some reason we can't.
It's a judicial discretion issue. Yeah.
So it is, so it could.
There are instances where somebody could just be notified and in order for arrest not be issued. And I know that there's different practices and philosophies across the bench as to whether to do that or not, and the reasons under which they might do one thing over the other.
Right.
I think to that point, because it wasn't one of the main crimes, larceny, related larceny.
Misdemeanor larceny.
I think so you have members of the public who are there to prosecute the crime, who take time for it to be available.
Yeah.
And so I think
That
that
can
kind of influences the judicial discretion at that point with those types of crimes.
Because we just mess around in civil court all the time with our continuances, but it's a different animal.
But that is one of the recommendations that did come out of that report from, around from the School of Government, just around reducing the number of, or changing kind of how a court operates, right? Making it more user friendly. So like they recommend hearings scheduled for smaller blocks of time so people aren't staying all day or all morning, right? Just making court more accessible.
Well, and there's some good data out there about the text notifications for bill collection, you get the response rate, the default rate, it's just incredible what a difference makes, especially as the generations get added on, and that's kind of their format for interfacing anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we have a really great tool that's out there now that's available to folks if they do have pending cases in the system here locally that they can go on and sign up for those court notifications. There's also been a lot of work, research done about the notifications themselves and what's the important information to provide in those messages. There's been research done on the forms that people get, from the court system about highlighting when you need to come to court. Sometimes that information isn't as easily accessible as we think it would be.
Meredith had a question from Zoom. Meredith Presley.
I did want to interrupt. Mayor Manheimer, I just wanted to weigh in. This is Meredith Presley from the DA's office. As far as the failures to appear, of course, it is a judicial discretion of whether to issue an order for arrest. In a number of cases, like the lower level traffic, they just issue the process rather than issue an order for arrest. So that would just be a failure to appear. And I've told our ADAs to try to consolidate individuals' court dates as much as they can so that they don't have a lesser chance of failing to appear with only one court date. And as of course Lee mentioned, the text notifications, we have those the QR codes for that in each of the courtrooms and are trying to get folks to sign up for that to get notifications about their court dates.
Any more questions? I mean, it's certainly a concerted effort, I think, from the court side to Justice Services, from support side, and ID Bureau to try to figure out how we can reduce that and give people information they need and additional resources to be able to appear. So this is important. This is a large amount of our jail population and impact, which has cyclical, right, impacts.
Oh yeah, it's
Never ends.
Yeah. Rachel, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, question about pretrial services. That's one of our biggest financial investments as a county for public safety, but also for court appearance. So do we have information about the success rates comparing the general detention population to those on pretrial? Are there differences in their FTAs?
We'd have to look at that. I'd have to figure out how to make that comparison, but I know, Natalie, right now, I think your your appearance rate is hovering in the mid-70s.
So it's in-
And it's actually, we have seen it go down over the last year. So Rachel, I'll have to figure out like how we can maybe make that comparison with the data that we have. But I know that this is something that they are seeing the impact of more so than they have historically in pretrial. That's a really great, interesting lens to look at it through. Yeah.
I think this has happened in the past where there have been like amnesty days, where if you have those outstanding warrants, you can come in without fear of being arrested and try to resolve as many of your charges as you could. Or if you can't, you at least get a reset on that. Is that anything that is currently happening or in process?
Meredith, I would look to hear if there's anything y'all are discussing in the DA's office around that at this point.
We don't have another amnesty day planned at this point, but folks are calling in, every day about cases they've missed court on, and so I will take that failure to appear strike to the judge to strike that and get their case reset. So we're certainly always willing to do that. We just don't have another one scheduled at this moment.
Any other questions?
It's interesting because on my side, on the like CPS side, there's so many impacts to those outstanding orders for arrest, even for the people that may not necessarily be hitting your jail population, because we are not able to get parents to come to visits and or come to their civil court appearances because of those outstanding warrants. So eventually they may wind up in your jail data, but there's also a huge number of people with outstanding orders for arrest for failures to appear that just are avoiding many different things because of those outstanding orders.
Lee, can you share with us do you have any information around the community engagement survey? What's the timeline for that and expected?
Yeah, so I think they did a first phase where we pulled some information and contact information where folks were reaching out, members of that community engagement work group were reaching out with a survey to people who have been released from custody. The response rate was pretty low, and I think what they're trying to do now is go back and look at what additional kind of connections and that we might could leverage for folks who contact information for some of this population can be not reliable, right? And so how can we better engage folks in that process? And I think, Natalie, I don't know if you have any insight too, because I know Justice Services is looking into this issue as well.
Yeah, we were trying to take a look at on the front end, we're kind of laying eyes on everybody who's in custody the morning of court. And so there's a lot of kind of historical data that we have an opportunity to analyze. And so even if we could create some flags, and we were kind of hypothetically throwing out there, but if individuals had X amount of FTAs in the last 2 years, this is the person we might want to touch base with when we have the opportunity to see if there are logistical hurdles that are contributing to those FTAs to kind of increase the quality of information that we're getting. And then two, we're trying to think through, and I'm not part of that team specifically, but even as we're collecting data, ways to do that to collect high quality data where they don't feel like we're asking these questions that are kind of intimate questions that could contribute to a punitive response or contribute to have a negative impact on their criminal case. And so we're trying to be very intentional about who asks the questions, when they ask the questions, at what point, but also recognizing once they're out of detention, it's a little bit more difficult. I wouldn't want to answer a survey if somebody cold called me. I would be distrustful, and so that we're create opportunities to make that connection with folks at the right time, I guess is what we're trying to think through and be kind of intentional about.
I'm on that work group and I wasn't delegated to make phone calls, but I think a big issue was just a lot of the phone rolled quite honestly. Folks don't pay their bills, drop their phones, may have been more than a year old.
Yeah, and I think y'all were getting this from JMS, is that right? Right. So that the historical booking data from JMS could be, particularly if somebody has been booked in several times, that phone number might change every time they're booked in, and then sometimes it's hard to know what a reliable one is. So one of the things we talked about with the folks we work with, for the most part, we have kind of good contact information for them. So facilitating that conversation, we were kind of brainstorming pretrial being a warm handoff to whoever facilitates the survey, but that we have a connection with them and then hopefully can empower them to give us some data that can be helpful.
And we found recently, particularly, that most of our clients don't have cell plans. They just have Wi-Fi and can only text when they can get free Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
So we've kind of switched away even from being able to make phone contact with people. It's mostly just text when they're able to get Wi-Fi.
No, that's true.
Yeah, we definitely, yeah, we see that quite a bit as well, but it just makes me think good about our.
Anything else on that, Lee? It looks like you're about to say something.
No, I was gonna close up if there's not any more questions.
All right, and we'll look at the additional data points that you all want us to review and analyze and bring it back, and hopefully bring back some results from the community survey sooner than later. I'm sure Justice Services is doing this, but I want to also make sure that we're lifting up the conversation with our case department to see if we can expand our reach as much as possible. All right, thank you. Now you're next to old business, just a quick update on our bylaws.
The old business, okay. Let's see. I was just going to show really quickly, we had a scrivener's error that we addressed within the bylaws, but we just wanted to let everybody see the adjustments we made. They were quick edits that did not change any of the content of the bylaws. So just as a side-by-side, you can see there, to the left is the old bylaws, to the right are the updated bylaws. So we had two section 1s previously, and then the other edit of note was under the membership. We had left out section 1 in the heading, so we clarified that a little bit. Let's get that to scroll to. Hello.
Can you make it a little bit, can you zoom?
I probably can.
And still get both?
That's right. Hold on. Nope. Not doing it. That's going to be difficult to read. Can you see that a little bit better?
I'm amazed that you're able to get these dual documents up here.
That was my one trick. I can't do a Zoom meeting, but I can do dual documents. If you can see here, section 3, you see the two, it's lagging is one of the issues. Section 3 is side by side there. Section 3, membership based on nomination and appointment. We had one bullet point there related to the community response, and then the second bullet point, the community at large, that just needed to be formatted, and section 4 added at the bottom. We just had section, and that was it. But those were just the tweaks that we made. We just wanted to present those. Do you have any questions about those, or how to present a PDF side by side?
So we kind of talked through whether or not we needed to have bylaws readopted. It doesn't change the content at all. We're just really formatting updates. So we thought that we would make sure we bring that forward to you all before we post the last adopted bylaws and make those Scrivener era corrections. All right. Okay, well, the bulk of our meeting goes to Mr. Ed here. I think it was the last JRAC meeting. Ed came and gave a high-level review update on the driver's license restoration program, and there was lots of interest in that. So we talked about doing one or two things, maybe we'll do both, is bringing Ed back to provide more detail and do a deeper dive into the program, and then look at perhaps also having like a work with Ed to see how we can enhance the program. So. You got it, Ed.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I think if you, at the top, you can share.
Oh, yeah, okay, that's easy enough.
Yeah.
And should I have this muted?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. Everything takes some getting used to, doesn't it?
We're gonna do away with high.
I was gonna say, how do we plan all of this intentionally?
I think it's all, I
Extra sanitizer and.
think it's all,
bar.
I think it's all or nothing. I think that's the only way to do it.
Grateful for free, so if you offer lunch, I'll show up.
I tried to sell the lunch, I really did. I was hoping that would get folks in.
Yeah,
Free lunch.
I bought. So did I.
Good, okay. Maybe we'll do a vote on food for next time, and that'll convince people.
All right, yeah, it's on you.
All right, thank you again for having me. Again, I'm Ed Treat, I'm staff attorney at Pisgah Legal. My practice includes expunction and driver's license restoration for low-income residents of Buncombe. I think it's 10 counties now. Some of the counties don't have all the services, so it's a little tough to keep track of. I'm contracted by Buncombe County to do expunction support through the Justice Resource Center. They don't fund my whole position. They fund, I think, supposed to be about half of it. But having that creates a space for us to do this work in, beyond Buncombe County and for folks who don't come through the JRC. So the demand for expunction alone is absolutely enormous. I think I saw a study from before 2020 when the Second Chance Act passed that it was a single-digit percentage of people were availing themselves of their eligible expunctions. So we're not even scratching the surface with that. I really don't even do any outreach anymore to have more cases than I can handle, as Julia can tell you. Driver's license restoration, I don't think Pisgah did at all before I started in January of 2021. I had never done it before either, so it's been a learning experience. As far as I know, I'm the only person doing this work for free in Western North Carolina. There's a little bit of it in Charlotte and in the Triangle, further east, some kind of places like that. As you can imagine, the demand is enormous. We're almost at the point where we're not taking any more cases, which is terrible, because this is, as you're going to see, this is highly impactful work, sometimes for a relatively small input. Just in terms of, what this is.
Is that because of funding?
Yes, basically, capacity.
Okay. Ask for something? Okay.
We'll get there. Thank you. So as the DMV is going to tell you, the most important thing to keep in mind is driving is a privilege. It's not a right. It's very rare that DMV absolutely bars somebody from driving for life. Really, even in very extreme circumstances, it's just practically speaking, it's impossible for many folks, even when there is supposed to be a mechanism. Sometimes there's time-barred suspensions, but typically very few people just are told you can never drive again for the rest of your life. Just want to show you the statute. I don't know why it's not catching up. Okay, it's just a little lag there. So this is the statute that creates the problem, basically. Basically, if you fail to appear in court or fail to pay a fine once, the division must revoke your license. So it's a must, no discretion by the Department of Motor Vehicles. I don't know if they would use their discretion if they had any, but they don't. Takes one to suspend you indefinitely, and you will see clients who have a suspension that is 10, 15, 20 years old. And it's a matter of a few $100s, quite honestly, and not necessarily a DWI or a vehicular manslaughter, anything of that nature. The numbers, I see these numbers all the time, and I still can't believe that they're real, and I think about it every time I get in a car. Again, we're going back to 2018, but I can't imagine it's a whole lot better at this point. It's, what is that, 1.25 million people with active driver's license suspensions in North Carolina. That's just for failure to pay and failure to appears. So there's other types of suspensions too. This is 15% of all adult drivers in the state. That is, I don't even know how that's possible, how we can function with that many suspended driver's licenses. The reality is people keep driving. They do what they need to do. And they make it worse because they get caught again and again. And it gets harder to rectify every time you fix it. The process is in and of itself counterproductive in that if the debt's not paid within a year, it's probably never going to be paid. The median length of a suspension for failure to pay is 6 years in North Carolina. And I'm not sure why, but in Buncombe County, it's 12 plus years. Again, that's 2018, so those numbers might have changed a little bit. Obviously not necessarily talking about people who are just scofflaws, not willful refusals. It's a lack of resources. Some people are going to tell you that what this problem really comes down to is relying on the people who are least able to do so to fund the system. The General Court of Justice fee, so on every case in 1995, it was $41. Today, it's $147. So it's gone up 260%, well beyond inflation. And this slide breaks down all kinds of other exciting fees. It's like when you get your cell phone bill and there's all these surcharges and service fees. The fine itself might be minuscule. The fine might be $50 and you end up paying $300 in fees. Again, the idea that the people in the system are going to pay for it it's very prevalent in our country, unfortunately. That's all very negative. Some slight good news that we got in January of this year. Judges in North Carolina are now required to consider a defendant's ability to pay when assessing fines and fees, and to sort of give them the opportunity after the case is over to go back and reconsider those fines if they've been unable to pay them. That's great. There's a petition form that you can get online. Anybody can Google it. It's AOC 415. We're hoping that the form is going to be streamlined and made more accessible. There's now sort of a toolkit that folks can access online in the hopes they're going to do this themselves without an attorney. But what this rule says, it's important to read. The judge has to consider it. The judge doesn't have to do anything. And it's a great start. It's not accessible. I've had volunteer attorneys call neighboring counties and ask, how do we file one of these motions? And none of the clerks had heard of the form. Like literally the clerk put down the phone and asked everyone in the office, how do we do this? Nobody knew. So clearly it's not an easy fix, but it's a start. And it is something that people might be able to do without an attorney eventually.
Is it in Superior and District? Yeah.
Yes. And we'll talk more about this a little bit later. This is something that could tie in with other resources that we already have in place, like Court Navigator program, a guide and file system, a self-help terminal. But anyway, I'm going to go pretty quickly through the next few slides, just kind of about the broader impact that these suspensions have. And it really struck me sitting over there for that earlier presentation about how much this ties in with the FTA problem. I don't know if there's numbers about it, but I bet you there's a lot of people who are not coming to court because they don't have reliable transportation. And on the other hand, they're not going to court on their traffic cases because they have FTAs on other things, and they're afraid they're going to get locked up when they come in for that. They're not going to be represented. They don't know what's going to happen if they've had negative encounters with the court system. That's understandable. I think the federal jobs report just came out, and it was really great, right? I think it was country added 500,000 jobs in July, something like that. It was really nice numbers. Buncombe County has, if not the lowest unemployment in state, I think we have among the lowest, right? Are we back there, I think? Great stuff. Everybody's got to help one sign out. Can't get anybody to bust your tables. It's great. I do the expunction work. It's a huge part of what I do. It's transformative for a lot of folks. A lot of folks are not eligible who should be. That is what it is. I'd like to think that in Asheville and Buncombe County today, you could probably get a job with a criminal record. You're not going to be CEO, but you can work if you want to. But you can't get there. You don't have reliable transportation. A lot of employers screen for that at the front end. I had a client recently came to me with an offer letter from an employer. He needed a copy of his driver's license, a valid driver's license. I had to help him get it. He missed out on that job opportunity because it took a long time. Sure enough, he got another one. But the point is, with the market being what it is in this part of the world, it's hugely impactful. Touches on just every aspect of kind of quality of life, social determinants of health, that kind of stuff, nutrition, education, involvement with your child's education. And I would estimate that not too many folks in the Buncombe County Jail are there because they have a suspended driver's license directly. There might be a few who are really serial offenders, but from talking to one of the staff at the county jail and at state prisons around the region, they said offhand, no, none of our people have driver's licenses. Again, that's not what they're here for, but they all could use this. And I don't have a number to back it up, but there's no way it's not going to prevent recidivism. It's absolutely no way. It's simply common sense. And I know folks tend to be in the county jail for shorter terms, but to me, the idea of sending somebody home from Swananoa or Craggy or whatever without even a plan to get a driver's license is just, it's ridiculous. How are they going to keep a job? How are they going to make their probation points? How are they going to pay those probation fees? DMV used to go into state prisons to at least renew licenses, not to restore suspensions, but to renew licenses, which was great. I think with the pandemic, they had to stop. And even then, that was a kind of a limited service. And accessing correctional facilities, understand, of course, it's complicated. There are huge catastrophic racial disparities here. People of color are obviously more likely to be subjected to traffic stops. They do worse, those stops happen. They do worse when they get to court. Statewide, as of 2018, non-white drivers were going to be suspended, I think, 4 times more likely than white drivers. Buncombe, unfortunately, it was a little bit higher, 5 times more likely. Some of the counties around us are much worse. Some of them are a little better. But obviously, there's a huge disparity here. And beyond even those individuals, it's just really important to keep in mind the ripple effect that this is going to have, where it makes everyone less safe on the road. It's much more expensive to get insurance if you have a suspended driver's license, if you can at all. Again, 15% of the state might be driving around without insurance. That is bonkers. I'm not a police officer. I was a prosecutor for 5 years. I worked with a lot of police officers. My understanding is that after domestic violence cases, traffic stops are the most dangerous thing that police officers do. I think that's counterintuitive. You wouldn't think so, but it's a dangerous situation. So less suspended licenses, less expired tags, all those good things, less car stops, less negative interactions, all those things we want to avoid in our county. Talking about what we might do about this horrible problem that I just told you guys on. The Buncombe County District Attorney's Office, and have to give them all the credit in the world, Meredith and Todd Williams have completed their mass relief project. That's phenomenal. That helps hundreds of people in one motion. That saves so much time. You know, if we could do those case by case, it would take me the rest of my life. And I think that's happened in 14 other jurisdictions around the state. It's a good start, but he got a ways to go. I've had some conversations with another DA in the region about maybe considering that in his district, and he told me no, without even have to think about it. So politically, let's be honest, that's not going to be sellable in a lot of places. It's just not. The jurisdictions where that tends to happen, you could probably guess where they are.
So is that a mass motion made under the statute you cited?
Yes.
So
yes.
Just take everybody and.
Well, it's not that simple in that they're going to qualify it. Obviously, it's going to be certain offenses. It's going to be if it's more than a certain time old. The ticket. You could disqualify. I think Judge Hill wanted it to be folks who did not have felonies on their records. I think so.
So it isn't just
felonies, but not violent convictions.
Okay. So there you go. So you can make that as broad or narrow as you want. And we're going to talk about how important that is, but how it's also not the silver bullet by any means. It's a really important component, and I would love to see it happen in Henderson, because I can tell you, almost none of my clients have suspensions in one county. It's just not the way it works. They live in Henderson, they drive to Asheville. They live in Rutherford, they drive to Asheville, whatever. Everybody has suspensions all over the place. So with all the goodwill in the world from Meredith and Todd, it's not going to get a lot of folks there. And that said, having a sympathetic district attorney's office is absolutely crucial. Makes my job so much easier. And they make me look like heroes all the time because they are willing to work on individual cases beyond the mass relief. And that is so crucial. Having just a designated attorney like Meredith who is available to have those conversations. And it doesn't mean they're going to give away the store every time. No, it doesn't. But just that there's a mechanism, because the mass relief, again, is retroactive. People are still picking up new cases. There's lots of cases that weren't covered in that. So that alone isn't enough. And I can't thank them enough for what they do there.
Question. How
Yes.
is the mass release communicated to the community right now?
Joe, there's a website that they can go to. It's
ncfairchance.org.
Yes, NC Fair Chance. Thanks, Ed. So they can put in their information, it'll pop up and tell them if they got the relief or not. So that was over 800 folks, between the 80s up to 2018 when I did the mass motions and orders. I am working on I have a whole box of files in my office, going back to like 1977 that I'm going through. It looks like those are a lot of unpaid fines, more than traffic stuff. It's all kinds of cases. So I have been in talks with Judge Hill about potentially doing additional motions on those, but it'll be quite an undertaking.
It needs to be stressed that this is a lot of work for the DA's office, and I'm sure Meredith has plenty of other things to do. She gets emails from me all day, every day, begging for help with my SAG clients. So it's easy to say we want the DA to do things like this. But I'm sure just like everybody else, they have staffing concerns, and it's not that simple. Other things that are being done around the state and in some cases here, Pisgah ran a virtual restoration clinic this spring. This is a model that's used around the state. The NC Pro Bono Resource Center piloted this probably some years ago now. Basically, volunteer attorneys get matched up with a client. The volunteer attorney gets a little bit of training, gets the client's DMV record for free, which is crucial. They draft an advice letter, they annotate the record. If you've ever ordered a DMV record, it's written in another language and it doesn't tell you how to get your license back. It might tell you that it's suspended, but the average person is certainly not going to figure it out. And I look at them every day and still come across records that I can't understand, quite honestly. So the volunteer drafts that advice letter, then they have a meeting with the client, probably virtually at this point, go over the letter with them because nobody reads anything, and explain to the client, here's what you need to do to get your license back. That's nice, and it's a great model in that it allows you to serve a lot of people relatively quickly. But as you can imagine, you're not providing a whole lot of, you're not providing representation. It's not really like in-depth service. It's really advice, it's a great first step. And even just giving a person a copy of the record is more than they had probably. But you're probably not directly getting that many people their licenses back with that, unfortunately. Also, very time consuming, as I can tell you, for me, the staff attorney, to run that program. Particularly early on, you're training volunteers who they might have been, real estate attorneys in their careers, and they come to this knowing nothing. So they need a lot of hand holding, unfortunately. It's a great way though to raise awareness. I could tell a lot of the volunteers went away from it really amazed at just the scope of the problem. So it was worthwhile for us, and it helped us build some connections with some of the local bar who have more in-depth knowledge. Some of the local firms, the Minnick firm in particular, Jake Minnick, has been tremendous. He makes a nice living doing these kind of cases, and he's willing to take on some from my clients for free. Just having a resource like that to ask questions to, it's phenomenal because traffic law is really hard. So we have the Mountain Area Volunteer Lawyer Program. Takes time to build that up, and again, the expert attorney is worth his weight in gold. The well-intentioned attorney who has no experience, it's more work on the staff attorney. It's a diminishing return. And with more resources, yeah, I could train more people, obviously. Again, turning back to the AOC 415 motions, they need to be more accessible. Folks are starting to find these, and Meredith and I have talked about that. She gets people cold calling her, asking, I want to file this motion. How do I do that? I think Buncombe County does a pretty good job of making that accessible to folks, but there's a lot of moving pieces. You have to serve it on the DA's office. You have to file it. It's supposed to be notarized, which, believe it or not, is a major stumbling block for a lot of our clients. And in a lot of counties, I'm sure they've never gotten one of these. And they are just going to look at you like you're a crazy person to try to file it. This could tie in with other things like with the Court Navigator. This might be a relatively easy lift for volunteers through a clinic or through kind of a self-help center. You really don't need to be a lawyer to do that form, even if it's, it might not get you that far, but it's easy to try. Also important to understand the limitations of that form. So your license gets suspended, you have court costs, fines, fees. You probably owe money to DMV directly as well. Those are not negotiable. Those are not waivable. The High Court of North Carolina cannot waive somebody's DMV restoration fee. And that's I think it's like $150. So not an insignificant expense, excuse me. One of the things that I've seen around North Carolina that impressed me most of all, and that I've been kicking and screaming about since I heard about it, is the town of Chapel Hill has a criminal justice debt relief fund. I think it was 2020, after all the civil unrest around George Floyd and everything. Chapel Hill decided they wanted to stop, as they put it, criminalizing poverty. And they figured out how much money they took in traffic court fees every year. It was about $20,000 at that point. And so they have a line item in their budget that matches that amount. They're not actually taking that money, because that money goes into a state central fund, but they basically match that every year, I think, is the plan. And it's amazingly enough to me, administered by the Chapel Hill Police Department Crisis Unit, which is actual police officers and social workers. So you might get a phone call if you apply to this fund. You might get a phone call from a uniformed police officer telling you, guess what? We're going to give you $500 so you can pay that ticket. I think there's a lot of talk about reimagining police and those kind of things, and it's not as simple as a little thing like that. But I think that's an amazing idea, and a tremendous commitment by Chapel Hill to really put their money where their mouth is. Again, they consider a lot of factors: residency, indigency, the nature of the expense. Have you explored other avenues of relief? The money gets paid directly to the court or DMV. The applicant's not given any money, and there's some things that are not eligible, obviously. It started with 20 grand in the one county, and the neighboring counties has kind of had a knock-on effect where they saw it and they wanted to be involved, and they've since contributed funds that their residents can use. And it was nice to see that kind of domino effect with that idea. Very, very happy to say that Pisgah Legal has a small pilot program for criminal justice debt relief. It's me. This is money that I got. This is money I got from the Safety Justice Challenge Grant. It's been amazing, and I can't thank the folks enough who helped make that happen. I don't want to do driver's license restoration work anymore if I don't have that kind of resource, because it's a wall that you're going to run into every time. Here's what you need to do, but it's going to cost you $800. Good luck. It's a lot of work too to administer it, as everyone can imagine. I naively did not know that because I've never done anything like that. A lot of paperwork. Kind of the work that I'm doing and that you're seeing around the state, it's typically referred to as restoration counsel. I would compare it to the contract that I have with the county now to do expunction, except it could include driver's license restoration, or be either or, that kind of thing. Orange County, again, has a restoration counsel position. I happen to know that attorney. I think that position is actually currently open, but I'm sure it's going to be filled. She does expunctions, general court debt relief, driver's license restoration, those kind of services. She works in the courthouse. She gets referrals from within the courtroom. People walk into her office and she helps them. Durham has the DEER program. I think that's 2 attorneys and a paralegal, funded by Durham. I think there are legal aid attorneys who are grant funded, if I'm not mistaken. I've heard lately they tend to do more expunction than driver's license work. It is hard to kind of keep the two from kind of bleeding into each other because they both are a lot of work. New Hanover is launching a similar program soon. Also, I believe grant funded legal aid attorneys. I think that's going to be 2 attorneys and a paralegal. I want to say that's launching beginning of next year. The Charlotte Center for Legal Advocacy has driver's license and expunction. I think theirs is funded specifically to work with a specific area of Charlotte, so that one's a little different. But it's great to have that network of folks around the state, because we get clients who have issues all over the state, and to have a local connection makes all the difference in the world. Knowing which DA in that office you can talk to, it saves a huge amount of time. One of the things that I found particularly helpful is partnering with various service providers around the region and building a relationship with them to kind of, I don't need anybody to follow me clients because I have more clients than I can take already, but having the client with that support system is just crucial. Once in a while, I get a client who, I don't know how they find me, but they're really not in a place to work on restoring their license. And it's hard for me to make that determination because they need help, clearly, but somebody who's not going to follow through on things, who's, maybe not stably housed, unreliable cell phone service, those kind of things. So somebody with a peer support network in place, a mentor, living in supportive housing, those to me are the clients who typically do the best, even with the bad licenses, because you get the releases where you can share information, obviously, with the other service providers, and you have like boots on the ground. We have a partnership with the United Way of Rutherford County that's been tremendous, where once or twice we've called them up and said, hey, this person needs a ride to the DMV. Can you get them there for their appointment so they can get their license back? Because guess what? They don't have reliable transportation. They can't get to DMV. It sounds silly, but if they're not doing it, I'm going to have to do it. And I don't have the resources for that. You could eventually have those kind of networks send clients who are sort of pre-screened, and even we're training case managers to understand DMV records and do a little bit of the work themselves before they get to the attorney, because they can do a lot. They can get DMV records. They can kind of interpret them and kind of, so the client comes to me in a better place. Also, United Way of Rutherford and Operation Gateway have some limited financial support available that they use. And they do all kinds of other services. It can be general reentry stuff, workforce development, substance abuse recovery, those kind of things. There's no point in me trying to figure out all those things if somebody else can do it better, right? Other ideas that I'm seeing around the state that I think are worth considering, the Court Navigator program we have here in Buncombe. Haven't had time to get with Court Navigator yet in Buncombe. I would love to. To me, it seems like an obvious fit. A lot of these tasks, you can go to the clerk's office, you can go online and get these forms, fill them out yourself. The average person is not doing that. Let's be honest, particularly if they've had negative interactions with the court and law enforcement. Applying for limited driving privileges, the 415 motions, those kind of things. Those could be done by somebody, without a law degree. And just to have somebody to hold your hand a little bit, I think would be a real difference maker. And there's never going to be enough free lawyers, so you need those kind of resources. Legal self-help center. There's one of these in Mecklenburg, I believe, and I think they're launching one in Wake soon. It's a public computer terminal with commonly used forms and a printer and instructions to make it a little more accessible to people. That can kind of tie in with somebody like a Court Navigator. Again, you're maybe getting by without an attorney. You're not really giving real legal advice, but you're helping folks, help themselves. A huge difference maker. One of the big stumbling blocks that I face, and this sounds absurd, is accessing DMV records. Most clients come to me without having seen their DMV record. They don't know how to get it. There's also a lot of fairly sketchy third-party websites that will sell you what purports to be your DMV record, and it's not accurate. So you just wasted some money and time, and that stinks to tell a client who just, that was a real hardship to pay $10. You can go on the DMV website and get your records, $10.75. They'll send it to you instantly as a PDF. That's great. Most clients don't know that. They might not have internet, and $10.75 might be completely out of the question. For most of my clients, they ask me to get it. I can get free DMV records, but it is very slow. There is a mechanism that I've never been able to figure out whereby North Carolina government entities can have access to DMV records. I kind of tried it when I started thinking, I technically work for the county, but I didn't get anywhere DMV. But to me, it doesn't make sense that you can go to a public terminal in the clerk's office in Buncombe County, in every county in North Carolina, and you can get your criminal record for free. Most people don't know that, but it's easy, it's free. You can email it to yourself, whatever. You can't do that with your DMV record. I think I know the reason why. It's because like a lot of these things where this is probably generating revenue for DMV, let's be honest, for them to sell your record for $10.75. So my cases get delayed for months while I get free records. It is what it is. All these ideas that I'm talking about, whether it's, more attorney time or non-legal assistance, just seems like a really obvious fit to me with a lot of the institutions that we already have in place. The Buncombe County Jail, the Public Defender's Office, the Justice Resource Center. We want to wrap people in services. I think talking with Josh and the team over there, if we put the word out, hey, we can get your driver's license here, I don't think there's not too many clients who aren't going to have at least somebody in their household that are going to want this. The demand is astonishing. I don't think we've ever really even done an internal survey at Pisgah. But I'm sure even if we were just putting it out amongst our own clients to a greater extent that this is available, they're going to break down the door. Like I said, I really even don't do any outreach on this anymore because I can't. We mentioned the idea of an amnesty day earlier. I know that has happened in the past and with other jurisdictions. I think the pandemic put a stop to a lot of that, but I would love to see that kind of thing start over again. It's work. It ties up resources, ties up judges, it ties up clerks, ties up prosecutors. But those kind of things, I think, can be really helpful. And I think it's also just sort of a nice way to demonstrate that we can be forgiving and, we can give people second chances for not wearing a seatbelt and things of that nature. I'm actually just going to share one client story. I know it's a story, but this is probably my favorite client of all time. And I've talked to Josh about him because I love this guy. This guy, man of color, North Carolina native. He's from Fayetteville, was in the Army for a couple of years. When he got out, he really struggled with mental health and substance abuse. A long time, went to prison. Not going to get an expunction, unfortunately. I'm not quite sure how he ended up in Asheville, but he ended up hooked up with a really good peer support network. He's doing really well, living in supporting housing. I think he manages a restaurant downtown, just got his peer support certification. And this guy had done all the hard work by the time he came to me. He'd been sober a long time. He's a rock star. He's awesome. But he didn't have a driver's license and he hadn't had one in, I want to say, a decade more. Didn't know why, couldn't tell me why. But was willing to help himself and got his DMV record, figured out what he needed to do. Once again, we had a very sympathetic DA's office on this one. This was Cumberland County, not Buncombe, but Cumberland County DA's office, really nice people apparently. They dismissed, after I reached out, they dismissed all but one of his old cases. There was one that they could not dismiss. And so I used the debt relief fund to help him pay that last fine. Then he had a restoration fee at DMV, helped him pay that. There was a little more that he had to pay in person himself that I logistically could not pay for him, and he paid that for himself. And he got his driver's license, I think, 2 weeks ago. And he has a job, I think, a job offer pending that was going to require him to get a driver's license working with folks like himself, working with veterans in recovery. They don't all go that well. This one actually happened fairly quickly and came together pretty nicely. It doesn't always work that way, but it's great when you get one like that. So as you can tell, there's not going to be any one. There's not going to be any one solution to any problem this big. We're not just talking about fixing all the old tickets that are outstanding in Buncombe County. We're talking about how are we going to prevent that from happening again? How are we going to stop people falling in that trap again? Changing the process and making it easier for folks to get themselves out when they do fall in there. Because again, there's never going to be enough free resources for them. Again, the DA mass relief is fantastic. But I think, I'm not sure so much here, but I know in other jurisdictions, we've seen jail populations go back up after the pandemic. It just sort of seems to sort of creep up. And I would hate to think that's going to happen with driver's license suspensions, but I don't see that it won't without things changing. People keep getting tickets and those kind of things. So we need to make space for these stakeholders to make this happen. Judges and clerks and district attorney's office need to be given the time to do this. It's easy to say we want a judge to consider somebody's ability to pay, but that makes every case take longer. And there's an efficiency argument. I know that sounds crazy. A judge is the king of his castle. No, judges have performance quotas like everybody else. And they need to have the time to do this stuff. That it's okay. That it's not just a gesture. Because it is going to take time. If you're going to do it on every case, it's going to slow everything down. And if you look at the number of people who are coming into court with public defenders, by their nature, they don't have any money. So the whole thing on some level is sort of absurd. Of course, this person doesn't have any money, and we need to be honest about that. Again, the built-in support system, something like the JRC, peer supports, mentors, is a game changer. That person comes to you kind of pre-screened, and somebody's vouching for them. They've been sober for however long, that sort of thing. where they're probably in a place that they can deal with this, that they're ready for this, because this is going to be the last step for a lot of folks, for somebody who's really, been through hard times. It can be tough to get folks to engage. It can be, and we all know that, how much harder it is than we would like it to be, that we have all these services. I spent a long time as a prosecutor trying really hard to lock people up, and there's a lot of that I'm proud of and some of that I'm not, but when I started the expunction job, I thought it's going to be the same people. It's going to be the same demographic. It's not. The people who could most benefit from an expunction probably can't get one because of the nature of their offenses. And they could most use our help. That said, they come out for driver's license restoration because, again, there is really no absolute bar. It's going to be harder if you have a more serious record, obviously, but it's not really concerned with your criminal record. And so it's easier to engage those really badly underserved populations. Nobody wants to be asking their mom for a ride, at 50 years old. So this is something that people want, and it's tangible, and it's something they can touch. Talking about specific recommendations. Obviously, I'd love to not be the only guy doing this. I'd love to have the resources to do it more than half time. The support is crucial. The Durham attorneys told me when they started, they just had the 2 attorneys. They were very excited. They then spent all their time just dealing with the walk-ins. So the administrative support is crucial. I think people kind of tend to overlook those kind of boring details, but it's absolutely, a paralegal who knows this stuff could do a huge amount of the work. Again, the financial aid resources are so important. There's so much that my clients come in with that I can't do anything about as an attorney, or that it's not worth my time to deal with. If your fine is $200, if I have to drive 3 hours each way to go to court to deal with that, that's not worth it. It bothers me on some level to pay into the system that way, but it just doesn't make any sense. Not to mention, we get folks with tickets in South Carolina, Tennessee, Florida, all over the place. And the DMV fees are often not negotiable, so there's nothing an attorney can do. A full-time attorney or attorneys could focus on some of the big picture things we talked about. Working with the other DAs in the region about maybe getting them to gradually buy into doing more, because it is a regional problem. And I know what we do here in Buncombe, it's not going to fly in a lot of the counties I serve, let's be honest. But there does tend to be a knock-on effect, and you get one county doing this and more kind of pay attention. Again,
I have a question for
sure.
you. I know we're running out of time.
Yeah, sorry,
but,
I'm going along.
Are there any states that have done something more holistic on a legislative level?
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
Because I think I shared with this group, I was part of this bipartisan group that looked at poverty in North Carolina out of Duke's public policy school, half Republicans, half Democrats. And this was one of the topics we tackled. And the way it was kind of sold, I think, to appeal across the political spectrum was it's also a major economic development issue, because you can't function as a strong economy when we have a labor shortage. This huge percentage of people that can't get to work. And so it seemed like there was a lot of like, wow, that's really broken. I mean, kind of nonpartisan. So I'm just curious if anybody, I feel like you're working your tail off, but you can I just wonder if there's any big picture, that legislation is great, but it's still obviously. It's kind of a Band-Aid. There was a push last year to limit failure to pay suspensions in the legislature. I think it died in committee. I don't have as much time to pay attention to that stuff as I would like to. And I can tell you that these statewide organizations and national organizations, they want a presence here in West North Carolina beyond direct services. They want local buy-in. And as they've told me, it's very hard for the NC Pro Bono Resource Center to cold call district attorneys in West North Carolina. They don't get anywhere. You know what I mean? It's not a conversation right now. Clearly, I'm not from here either. I'm not fooling anybody with this accent, but with the networks that we have, this region is missing out. A lot of this stuff is centered in the Triangle, quite honestly, and they need local connections to make it happen.
I think, Mayor, we could do some research around that. I recall when I was in Illinois, we saw California do some wholesale state statute changes, and also I think Tennessee. is some. So there's some state
Tennessee
legislative
can't be
changes.
not so.
Yeah.
That's
I
the
mean,
spirit.
but is it, are the numbers kind of the same in other states? And is it sort of a problem across the
Most states do this kind of one missed court date, one missed filing system.
So they're seeing this number of people.
Yes, yeah, and there is a national fine and fee justice movement. I think, I want to say maybe a dozen or so states have started to limit this kind of stuff. It's a great start, and it might be something that North Carolina looks to eventually. I mean, sooner rather than later, I hope. But I think it is also important to think about what we can do here, because even within those frameworks, you need to ask yourself about, so you're limiting the term of suspension. That's great. Why are people falling into those in the first place? Why does this keep happening? So it needs to be a concerted effort, and I would love to be more involved with what the folks in Raleigh are doing, and they would love for me to be more involved, because I'm the guy they know out here, and they don't have a voice here, which is unfortunate. I know I talked for a really long time, and I talk really fast.
Thank you. This is good.
Questions?
We are coming up on time. Any more, maybe we could take one more question if there is one. I do think maybe an action item from this is to have some folks that are interested in diving deeper into this issue, maybe spend some time with Ed at time, but with Ed to figure out what we can do next. So what's the next steps? It could be statute, it could be legislative, it could be some other things that we can do. So thanks so much. Anybody have anything to add?
I just want to add something really quick, and then I'll shut up. The folks who do this kind of work around the state and the Triangle, those kind of places, would love to make themselves available to talk about what they're doing and to offer their expertise and their guidance, what has worked and what hasn't worked. Because some of them have a much more of a big picture perspective than I do. But they've also done the direct services work, so they have great experience. So that's something to consider if you want to do it. Thanks for having me, everybody.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Anybody have any announcements for the good of the group from your officers? None. I would like to share that to my right here, it might look like the left from the screen. I have Mylan Patton. Mylan is actually a fellow from the North Carolina Lead for North Carolina program through AmeriCorps and through the UNC School of Government. And Mylan is spending a year's service here with the county manager's office. Mylan has lots of big, heavy projects that he's going to be working on. So Mylan, I don't know if you want to say anything, but y'all will see him around a ton over the next year.
It's glad to be here. This is my first week, so just finishing up the first week. I'm going to be working on countywide apprenticeships, homelessness solutions, and then racial equity, which will be, I think, a great part of this work. So looking forward to learning about Buncombe County and seeing how I can help out. Glad to be here.
We hope you get both of these issues solved.
I'll pass.
So I said heavy. All right. Anything else? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
So moved. Second? Second.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Close your ears. Yeah, I'm gonna do a roll call. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, y'all have a good weekend. Thank you. We'll see each other in person in a couple months. Bye. All right, y'all take some lunch with you, a midday, early dinner.
Thank you for bringing the cake up.
I do.